Why is your life a mess? Why are there people that you interact with that just do not make sense to you? Why is sometimes communication between two people or groups of people so difficult? So recently I've been experiencing something that I've never experienced before. What I've discovered is apparently my source says, hey Sabrina, guess what? We're gonna have you experience all of these different things. That way, when your client comes to you with problem X, Y, or Z, you're like, I got you, don't worry. I've been through this before. I know exactly what's going on. Here, let me hold you in my arms and we'll get through this together. Now, as a student of psychology and sociology, when I was going to school, I was having to do all sorts of research, do statistics, and put together my own questionnaires and assessments. And throughout all of this, there was a particular point in my career where I'm like, is this stuff like all made up? Who comes up with this stuff? So as an example, Myers-Briggs. When I was learning Myers-Briggs, you know, that's the one who's like, oh, I'm an introvert, I'm an extrovert, I'm feeling, I'm judging, I'm sensing, all of that other stuff. Well, here's the thing. Some people, they're extreme extroverts. It's obvious they're an extrovert. Other people, they're extreme introverts. It's obvious they're introverts. Now, the other thing about the introvert-extrovert that is sometimes misunderstood is some people think that extrovert only means that you're just sociable. You're just able to go out there and make friends no matter what. Other people view it as, well, that's when you recharge your batteries. So for you, being in a high social situation, it's fun, you get energy from it, you feel excited. And for introverts in that similar situation to recharge their batteries, they need people to go away. So sometimes in social settings, they can appear to be an extrovert because they do maybe possibly make friends easy. They do, socialize and stuff like that, but they need their alone time. And it's super important for them to have their alone time. So there's different ways also of looking at an introvert, extrovert, the definitions of that and how you are as a person, because some of it is internal and some of it's more external. I'll get to that more in a bit. Anyway, as I'm learning all of this, I tend to be kind of what some would consider like an X, which basically means I'm not exactly an introvert and I'm not exactly an extrovert. I'm like right in the middle. And on a lot of stuff, I tend to score in the middle of things. And when I was younger, when I was learning all of this, I was like, okay, you know what? This is just some grad student, or this is just, some like psychologist who's like, oh, you know what would be fun? And like they're messing with people, right? Or it was some grad student project and they're like, I think this is a good idea. And they turn it into a whole thing. I honestly thought for a while that it was all bullshit. And then after studying people and really realizing, wait, no, for some people, it's very true. They really do fit into the category of introvert or extrovert and so on. And not everyone does. So to put people in boxes, it's kind of been like, I'm kind of like against that. And to put labels on people, I'm also in some ways against that too, because I'm like, well, what if that person, what if there's an introvert who they want to be more social, they want to have more friends, that's something that they think would bring them happiness, but they're so boxed into, oh no, I've been told I'm an introvert, so I can't go out and be social because they have that label. So now on the other hand, what I've discovered too is that, well, it's really good to know yourself, and sometimes in some cases, labels are ways of trying to explain who you are. We all need to use I'm speaking English, whatever language you are speaking, but we all need to use language to communicate. So if I'm saying, hey, go get me a chair, it's important that we all know what a chair is. So sometimes labels can be valuable. And like I said, sometimes I feel like we get a little bit trapped in labels. So again, it's hard for me to do the label thing. And lately I've been doing some deep dive into some research that, needs labels. Now, here's the other problem with labels. And this is why there's certain things that I study and there's certain things that I kind of I know about it, but I avoid taking a deep dive into it because I'm like, I just don't know if I agree with it. And one of the things that I think almost everybody knows about attachment styles by now. It's talked a lot about, especially if you're into studying personal growth and development, then yes, you do. If you're not, then yeah, you might have never heard of them. However, a lot of people who study channels like mine, they know about different things like attachment styles. Now, with attachment styles, I've kind of not really spent a lot of time on them. And again, it's because it's a very small category. In other words, when you have a very narrow, it's either A or B, right? If you have something that's very narrow like that, like there's not a lot of choices, I have a very hard time putting somebody straight in the category of A or B. There's C, there's D, there's probably all the way to Z. So sometimes, like I said, I avoid, I just don't concentrate on that type of assessment. Now, there's been something going on in my personal life where I've discovered someone who I've never been around a person like this. Now, I might have in my past encountered like a friend or somebody who's like this, and I'll explain what I mean in just a moment. But sometimes you experience these people and you're just like, this is very strange behavior. I wonder what's going on with this person. What is this person's background? What is this person's story? And that's me. I'm always curious as to like, how is this person the way they are? And that's why I do what I do. So I've experienced this person that, again, I might have experienced in a friendship perspective before. And I'll give you an example. So you know those friends who you invite them places, and they're like, yeah, I want to go. But then they always like flake. You invite them out to go do things, but then they don't end up showing up. And you just kind of wonder like, okay, is it me? Like, do they not like me? Do they not like the other people that we're with? You know, what is it? And then you realize, oh no, they treat everybody like this. And then you're going, okay, what is it with this person? Why are they avoiding hanging out with people, even though they say they want to? And that's just a very minor example. We're gonna delve deeper into this. Recently, I've been dating this guy who I've never experienced a personality like his. And I'll be going over this more in other videos as well. And I might even make another video prior to releasing this one that's talking about what has been happening. However, as a coach, as someone who gives people advice and therapy and everything like that, for me, I always make sure that before I see clients, I'm okay myself. Like, I'm doing my work to be the best possible person that I can show up as. Because if I'm not, then all of my clients are just gonna bring me my stuff and I'm gonna have to deal with it while I'm talking to a client. Coaches, you guys know what I'm talking about. Other therapists, other people who work in the mental and emotional fields or personal growth fields, teachers, trainers, you guys all know what I'm talking about. So I've been taking some time off to work on me because I've been in a very difficult situation. I've been seeing 2 different coaches plus a therapist to make sure that everything going on with me, that I'm not missing anything with myself. With that, this one particular coach pointed out, and then talking with others are confirming all of this, that I have been with someone who has a particular attachment style that isn't very common. So we're gonna jump into talking about attachment styles right now. And with attachment styles, again, I previously hadn't really spent a lot of time on it because there weren't a lot of categories. So you have your secure attachment styles. So you have people who have secure attachments. Now, as someone who has studied Jungian psychology and knows a lot about childhood development. So I've really studied the childhood development phases and what happens during childhood, what happens as you're growing and maturing. And one of the things that happens when you're a child is that you are operating only from your unconscious mind. Some people will say subconscious, it's the same word. I personally use the word unconscious. But you're operating only from that perspective. You do not have discernment when you're young. Your brain has not developed the ability to have discernment yet. So for you, everything that is happening, you're just absorbing it. So whatever your parents say, whatever your church, if you go to one, says, whatever the television shows you're watching say, whatever your teachers say, your kindergarten, elementary school teachers, whatever they're saying goes into your unconscious mind, and you do not have the ability to say, no, that's not for me. So what happens is, for example, if your parents say, money doesn't grow on trees, or we don't, basically providing all these different negative things about money. As a child, you actually develop beliefs about money that, there's scarcity, there's not enough of it, we don't have enough of it, we can't get everything that we want because there's not enough money to go around. You don't have the ability at that age to say, no, that's not for me. Now, the good news is that's all programming, and your mind can be unprogrammed or reprogrammed. However, whatever is happening in the moment of childhood, if your parents have secure attachment styles, it's likely you're going to fall into the category of secure attachment. Now, other things can happen to where you have an avoidant attachment style. So some people, things weren't going well with their parents, whatever was happening in the background, and perhaps maybe there was like too much arguing, right? There was just too much conflict, too much things going on, and you're like, you know what? No, I don't want to deal with people. I'm just going to avoid the situation. To keep myself safe, I'm going to go run and hide, and I'm going to avoid having any kind of emotional contact. So avoidant attachment styles, they fall into this. Now, please understand, for the purpose of this video, I'm majorly simplifying everything because we've got a lot more stuff to get to. So I'm giving you just a very basic overview. Maybe I'll do more specific videos on this. I don't know. This really hasn't been my thing, and there's a lot of great videos and a lot of great resources. So I'll either start posting some of the link below, or maybe I'll make my own videos. Don't know yet. But please understand, again, very surface level, because I just don't have enough time in this video to delve deep into it. Now, then there's your anxious attachment style. So anxious attachment, sometimes the parents, maybe they weren't available or they weren't around. And so those particular children are like, oh, are you coming home? Are you going to be with me? Hey, please pay attention to me. Hey, I'm right here. And so they start to develop an anxious attachment style. Now, here's the thing about labels. Here's the thing about categories. These are only 3 different categories. And whenever I see something like this, I'm like, in statistics, there's always these things called outliers. Outliers are the groups of people who they don't fit neatly into the category. So in order to have a category, you have to have, these people show up this way. These are the behaviors of these types of people. So as an example, an anxious attachment style, they might have the behaviors of being clingy. They probably seem very needy. If you don't text them back right away, they're going, oh no, where are they? Do they love me anymore? Did they, and they always need reassurance. Hey, do you love me? Do you still love me? Am I still good enough for you? And here's the thing, all of this is okay. It's okay if you're anxious. It's okay if you're avoidant. It's okay if you're secure. That's just where you're at right now. And anyone in these other categories can develop a secure attachment style. Again, it's just at the unconscious programming that we got when we were children. So when these two get together, an avoidant and an anxious, things are likely to go wrong in the relationship because an avoidant needs to step back. They can't handle a lot of emotional attachment. And an anxious needs a lot of emotional attachment. So if you get these two people together and they're in a relationship, they can be madly in love, they could be excellent at a lot of things, but all of a sudden there could be conflict in their relationship because they have 2 different ways of attaching. So what you want to do, obviously, is try to get them to both have a secure attachment style. Now, again, there's these things called outliers where they don't really have a secure attachment, but they're not exhibiting exactly the list of behaviors that either of these two would exhibit. So what happened is people started noticing, wait, these outliers, instead of being completely different, they started noticing, wait, there is another category. There's enough information on how this 4th group behaves that these outliers actually make up a new category. Now we're getting more into the, okay, maybe there is something to this, to where we can start to recognize these behaviors and these patterns, okay? So this particular group, different people have different labels for this. So some people call this a fearful avoidant style, and other people will call this a disorganized avoidant, or some will say loud disorganized avoidant. So what happens here is this one is basically a combination of the avoidant and anxious. So what has happened in this particular case is that the person in childhood, they maybe had a parent who was always criticizing them, or who had high expectations, and the parent was constantly not valuing them or validating their emotions. So at first, this person became anxious, constantly trying to do things to be like, hey, do you like me now? Hey, look what I did. Hey, I did this amazing project. I did this amazing thing. I got this a really good grade on this thing. And so they become this anxious, always trying to prove themselves to the parent. And it doesn't work. So then they go a little bit further. And so instead of being anxious, they then become avoidant. Well, then I'm going to just avoid anything that has to do with emotions altogether. So they actually have a combination of the two of them. Now, again, please understand I am simplifying this, but basically this category down here, things went so wrong with their relationship. And I want to clarify something else as well. So the parents, they're doing the best they can with what they have. They might have one of these other attachment styles that's not a secure attachment style themselves. So it's not like they're purposely trying to harm the child. It's not like they're purposely going, oh, you're not perfect. Oh, you only got an A. What happened to 100? You only got a 95. Why couldn't you do better? It's not that they're in that kind of mentality. Most of the time, the parents are actually really trying to help the child. Most of the time, they're like, oh, great, you got an A. Let's do better next time. We can't just go around blaming the parents, because sometimes the parents, they have their own attachment style that isn't healthy. Sometimes the parents have no clue what they're doing. They might see the 95 and they're like, oh, that is amazing. Hey, let's get 100 next time. And they could honestly mean it as something positive, like they're trying to encourage their children. And the child simply takes it as, oh, they don't think I'm good enough. The thing is, we don't want to put blame anywhere. We don't want to blame the child. We don't want to blame the parent. We don't want to blame the child. Sure, it could absolutely be the parent is has way too high expectations, like ridiculous high expectations, borderline abusive. We can also say the child just really, you could just say, oh, kid, you need to get over it. Come on. Your mom's not trying to blah, 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 right? We could go either way. That's not the point. The point is it simply developed somehow, some way, and what can happen is that we can now grow from it once we realize what our attachment style is. Now, how I found out about this is because the fearful avoidant, or the disorganized avoidant, or the loud disorganized avoidant, however you want to label that, I ended up dating one. And it was the most confusing thing because, like I said, I've never really had this type of experience before. And so he invited me to move in with him. So I moved in with him, and there were all these magical things that were happening at the same time, all of these signs from the universe, all of these, if you want to get into the energy stuff, all the woo-woo, there's a ton of woo-woo things going on. So I'm like, oh, okay, this is meant to be. When I first got to his house, I had this weird deja vu thing because the type of house that it's not a normal standard house. The type of house it is, I'm like, oh my gosh, I used to draw architecture that looked like this when I was a kid. I don't know, I'm an architecture nerd, I guess. I loved drawing architecture when I was a kid. Anyway, and so I'm like, oh my gosh. And he came up to me and he was like, I always knew that I was building this house for someone, and now I know who. It's you. So he painted this fairy tale thing of like, I'm his person, I'm the reason why he built this house, and I'm the one he built it for, and all of these different things. And so I moved in with him. As soon as I moved in with him, it was like a switch went off. He went from loving and snuggling and hand-holding and kind and caring to, I can't be around your energy. Now, he's very spiritual, so he claims that he vibrates on a higher vibration. He's extremely sensitive to energy. Like this shirt I'm wearing, he would not like this shirt because it's too bright. Like he does not like bright colors. His house is very soft, gentle, light blues and tans and stuff like that. And so I moved, like I sold all of my stuff, and I had some boxes, like clothes, toilet, like your basic stuff, clothes, toiletries, some utensils and stuff like that. I was allowed to move into the house. And yes, I'm using the word allowed for a very specific purpose. I have 20 other boxes that have books, some crystals, some meditation stuff, just a variety of other things. And he's like, okay, you can't move those in. Like, you got to stop unpacking. And I'm like, what? And he's like, the vibration of your things. Like, it's not you. I can't stand the vibration of your things. And I don't want clutter. Like, I don't want the house to be cluttered. So I wasn't allowed to unpack. Now, at the time, I'm like, okay, I can get how you're sensitive to energy. I want to be mindful and respectful. Now, in the very beginning, I was hurt because I thought, wait a minute, I have done so much like energy work and everything. I'm like, what do you mean all of my stuff has a bad energy? Like, that's not right. Everybody at my old house, everybody would walk in and they're like, oh, I love the feel of your house. It's so calm. I love your decorations. Like, I always got compliments on my house. Like, it was anyway. And so I'm like, okay, this is kind of strange, but this is new for him. Now, here's the other thing is, he's older. So he's 54 years old, and his longest relationship has been 2 years. He was engaged and during that time period, and he called it off. And he called it off because he said that she wasn't going to be able to grow in the relationship. So he called it off for her so that she could grow and find herself and find who she was going to be. Now, this was a bit of a red flag in the beginning, and he explained it away with spiritual purposes if I was just looking for my perfect person. And I'm like, okay, I get that. I mean, I understand sometimes you're dating somebody and you're just not clicking. The feeling isn't there. And he's like, made it all about me, about how I'm the one that he's been waiting for, and that's why he hasn't had long relationships. So I'm like, okay, maybe, right? Still kind of that red flag still waving a little bit, but there are a bunch of other green flags, and so I'm like, okay, the green flag kind of outweighs the red flag. Unfortunately, there was more and more red flags. So again, I've got like 20 boxes in the garage that I still have not been able to unpack in 5 months. Okay, fast forward. Then it was, first of all, just the stuff that I didn't unpack, like my toiletries, my clothes and stuff like that, just the stuff that I did have that happen. Plus, I had to unpack everything from cardboard boxes and put them in plastic bins because where we live in Hawaii, stuff can get moldy, so you can't leave stuff in cardboard boxes. So even just the fact that I brought my stuff out to put them back into containers, it traumatized him. And I'm using the word trauma because that's his word. He was like, the trauma I went through when you moved in. And I'm like, trauma? Like somebody moving into your house is trauma for you? Because let me tell you, I got clients who, even me myself, I've been through trauma. And there's something that I teach and that I practice, which is respect other people's model of the world. So that was his model. His model was that it was a trauma. And so I'm respecting that. I'm like, okay, this is your model. I will respect that. However, it continues. So fast forward, because of the trauma, he wouldn't hug me. He wouldn't kiss me. I would have to be the one to initiate. And when I did, it was like a little flyby kind of thing, right? Oh, but we still had sex. I don't understand that. But during sex, that's when he felt the strongest connection. That's when our connection was the strongest. He would cuddle me for like half a minute afterwards. But if I got too snuggly, he's like, no, you're being clingy. And it's like, I'm just cuddling you. Like, that's normal. Anyway, so because I've never experienced this type of attachment style before, it was putting me in a very strange place because I've experienced avoidant and I've experienced anxious. I've experienced both of those. And like I said, everybody kind of goes through these things. Even I do. So with that, I'm going, well, what is happening here? Then it continues on. So then it was like a hot, cold thing. So then it was, oh, you're my person. We're supposed to be together. I'm working on this. And then I'm done. And then, no, let's give this a try. I'm done. Back and forth and back and forth. Well, now doing a lot of research on the disorganized avoidant attachment style, what's happening is they do the avoidant thing, but what they do is they crave love. They crave connection. It's something that they want so bad, but it's also their poison. So if you try to give them love, if you try to support them, they actually push further away. They don't know how to handle it. They don't know what to do to deal with it. So in all of everything that I've learned has been more dealing with the other two. So everything I'm doing, being supportive, being understanding, being all of these different things to a disorganized avoidant, that's actually kryptonite. That's actually, if you are like, hey, it's okay, go take your time. Sometimes they're like, wait a minute, hold on. She's saying this, so that means it's probably gonna be over, so I'm leaving. I can't handle this emotional stuff. Oh, anytime it gets too emotional, like I've never seen him cry. And the other thing is about the past, like all of his stories, he talks about his mom more than any other guy I've met. And all of the stories about his past from his mom fit this category like to the T. Now, so that's some of the things that I've been learning and I've been dealing with. The purpose of this video though is not so much to discuss only this, it's to discuss why, even though you're looking at this, you're still gonna get outliers. So as an example, for me, I normally show up as a secure attachment style, and I'm actually friends with some of my exes. And so when talking to them, I'm like, hey, how was I showing up in our relationship? Secure attachment. Now, what I noticed though, there was one time I was with someone who was going through a lot of stuff in his life, and he was going into the avoidant attachment style. And as he was doing that, I went kind of from secure a little bit into anxious because I'm like, what is that going on? What is happening? And then I realized, oh, he's moving into an avoidant attachment style, which is having me and the reaction going a little bit here, recognized it, was able to pull myself back up here. Recently though, with this particular relationship, I noticed myself starting to go into anxious. And I'm like, this is strange, because especially after having that experience where a previous boyfriend pulled me a little bit into anxious when he went into avoidant, I recognized those signs. I recognized that type of behavior. And so this last time, the guy, Jeff, the last time Jeff said, hey, I'm done. Like, we're done. You need to move out. We're not doing this anymore. The last time I'm like, wow, something is really going on here. The other thing is that I had went to see some friends and family. So I went to the mainland for Christmas, and long story about how that I wasn't even supposed to go. Anyway, long story there, very interesting the way he arranged some things. And so I went by myself. And when I got back, that's when he was like, yeah, I'm done. Now, that is a typical response from a disorganized avoidant. Because when you go away, what happens is their nervous system actually feels calm and relaxed, because when they're with you, especially if you're someone who is affectionate, especially if you're someone who tries to be supportive and, hey, whatever's going on, like, it's okay. We can do this. We can work through this. That scares them. It's exactly what they want, but it also scares them at the same time. So when you're going, it's okay, I got you. We can work through this. Whatever's going on for you, I'm here. That freaks them out. They don't know what to do with that. They think, no, if she stays, she's going to actually find out why I'm defective. Because that's the thing, is a lot of these, in this category, they tend to think that there's something about themselves that once people really see them, they're not going to like what they see. Which is interesting because that was a big thing of his. He's like, you don't really see me. You don't really see who I am. And he kept saying that. And he's like, people don't see me. People can't really see who I am. He said that a lot in the beginning, towards the middle, and towards the end. He's like, oh, no. No, I have friends who see me. And I'm like, Jeff, that's not what you were saying before. And that's the other thing too, is that he changes a lot of what he says a lot of the times. Oh, I built this house for you. Oh no, I was wrong. I just, At the same time, he's supposed to be this highly powerful spiritual person who sees these things, who's like knowledgeable about all these pieces of information, yet, oh no, not that one, I was wrong. So again, he gets scared and goes into this. But what I started noticing is, because I didn't understand that what I'm doing is both his medicine and poison at the same time, nothing was making sense to me. And so I started going into this anxious of like, what's happening? I'm doing everything he's asking. I'm not unpacking. I'm being respectful of his energy. I'm being respectful of his space. So what is it? Why does he keep detaching? And, in the beginning, again, he created this trauma experience of the unpacking. And he even admitted, yes, I created that. He even admitted, I said, look, you're creating these fights just so that we have this distance between us. And he's like, yeah, you recognize that. I'm like, yes, I do. So what can happen sometimes is when you're dealing with someone who is so unlike your personality, things can start happening to you to where you're no longer like where you want to be because you're so confused and you don't understand. So again, we're talking about outliers. Well, in this case, I kind of moved from the secure attachment style and started moving into the anxious attachment style. Because my nervous system was so disorganized, right? I'm dealing with a disorganized person, and that energy started to affect me, and my nervous system started becoming disorganized. Not that I had a disorganized attachment style, just within me, I'm like, this doesn't feel good. Like, this is not okay. And I was letting him, especially since he's the masculine, I'm letting him go through and dictate if I'm unpacking, dictate what I can have of what of my things I can have out in his house, which was our house in the beginning, right? So it was always, oh, our house. Yes, our house. And then my house, my knives, like, do these things. And I'm like, what is happening? So this can also happen as well. And then, of course, now doing work, you go back to this. Now, this is only a part of it. And the whole point of the video is it's so much more than this. This is just your attachment style. You also have processing styles. With processing styles, this is how you process information. So some people process information internally and some people process it externally. So what that means is if I'm learning a new piece of information, sometimes for some people, they have to think about it inside their head. So they're just sitting there quietly, listening, thinking about it, and they're doing everything in their head. Or sometimes it's not necessarily learning, but it's a situation. So people are communicating, they're in a conversation, or maybe they're in a heated argument. Some people are going to internalize and they're going to internally process the information. Other people, they're going to want to externalize. They're going to want to be more external when they're processing. So when they're learning, they might have to ask questions. They might have to like repeat the speaker, and they might have to talk out loud about it. If they're in a conversation, they're the ones who sometimes you'll say something like, hey, do you want to go to the movies? And the other person's like, go to the movies. Or what's a better one? I'm trying to think of, so they'll say something, they'll basically repeat back what you just said. Like, oh, that popcorn smells good. And they're like, yeah, the popcorn smells good. And they're like, yeah, I just said that, right? But they like to say it out loud. And so they're the ones that sometimes you're like, yeah, I literally just said that. Sometimes they repeat you because they're externalizing the process. If it's in an argument, sometimes they like to talk through things. When they're learning again, sometimes they like to ask questions. Now, the thing about this is that, of course, there's only two, right? So then you're like, okay, Sabrina, you said if there's only a small category, it's like the A-B thing, well, can everybody really be grouped into this? So here's where the processing styles get extended. So you can be an internal or external thinker. So it can be within thinking, and it can also be in speaking, and they might not be the same. So you might be an internal thinker, but you might be an external speaker. So you can maybe, when you learn new information, you can then, inside you're thinking about it and you're processing it internally. And then later, to really learn it, then you have to talk about it. Then you have to speak about it. In a conversation, sometimes you can be an internal thinker. So in the conversation, you're thinking about it, but you don't really say anything. Now, an external thinker and speaker, like say they're external, they're both external in thinking and speaking. If you're internal in either one of these and you're with an external, then you might just be sitting there not really saying anything, and your partner's going to be like, hello? Like, are you listening to me? Are you just ignoring me? Where did you go? Did you space out for a minute? Why aren't you saying anything? Well, for the other person, they might be an internal thinker. So they might just be processing everything in their mind, so they're not saying anything. And then, because you've interrupted their internal thought process and you've put them on the spot, then they're like, and they can't really externalize what they're thinking. So they might not be able to go into the external speaking because they might have frozen. Another thing that can happen is sometimes you're an external speaker, but then you have to later process things internally. So what can happen is, so you're in a conversation and maybe you're in an argument. So the two of you, you're with your partner or something, and you're in an argument, and for you really need to talk about it. You need to talk about things and really kind of talk through things and figure it out. Some people, if you're with a partner that doesn't want to talk about it, they're like, oh, why do we have to talk about this? Like, why can't you figure it out? Now, sometimes what can happen is, in the moment, you're an external speaker. So you want to talk through it. You want to talk about it. And then later, you maybe go internal to think about it and process it on your own when you're quiet later, like at night or something. So knowing your partner's attachment styles, knowing your partner's processing styles, knowing your own attachment style and your own processing style is extremely important. That's the other thing that's going on with Jeff is that when I explained this to him, he's like, oh, well, if that's what you need to think to make this okay for you, if you need to think the breakup is about that, then you can go ahead and think that. And he said, he was talking to me, he said, he's like, what you're doing is you're just making it about the other person. You're just externalizing it instead of seeing what's going on with you inside. And I was like, Jeff, I'm not the one who mentioned this. I'm not the one who said this. I didn't come up with this. I didn't make this up. To him, though, he doesn't want to face this. He doesn't even want to look at it. And in fact, when I presented this to him, I didn't present it because I didn't want it to come from me. Plus, like I said, there are a ton of really good YouTube videos about this. So I actually showed a video explaining this from someone else because I'm like, I want you to hear it from someone other than me. And afterwards, I started discussing this with him, and he's like, well, you didn't even ask any questions. You didn't go into like, well, what do you think about the video? Like me, he wanted me to ask him what I thought. Like, what does he think about it? As in asking him what he thinks about this particular concept. Now, in the moment, I didn't go into asking him questions because I wanted to present it. Because I knew if I asked him, well, what do you think about this? He would go into this particular pattern of avoiding it, of coming up with all of these reasons that he is not this. So of course I didn't ask any questions. It was more of a, hey, this was presented to me. I'm telling you what it is. What do you think from the perspective of, hey, if you're thinking about this, I can help you with this. We can talk about it. We can discuss it with the other person. Now, instead, what happened was he threw everything back on me, that I am looking to the outside of me for something that's going on, instead of him looking into the internalness of himself. Now, the thing is that the reason why I was speaking about any of this in the first place, well, actually, again, I didn't even bring this up. However, all of the different conversations I was going through with my coach is and therapist, was all about, what am I doing? What am I doing for the relationship, to the relationship, anything like that? How am I presenting myself? So I already was looking internal. The other thing is that when I presented this to him, it was all pushed back on me. There was no inquisitive questions from him. He was expecting me to ask the inquisitive questions, but there was no inquisitive questions from him of like, wait, you think I might have this? Well, what does that mean? Let's delve deep into this and figure out what this is. For someone who claims he's into personal growth and development, for someone who claims he is always about looking into himself and, figuring out if he's missing something within himself, a normal, secure response, if he was in the secure part, a normal, secure response would have been, oh, you think this is going on with me? Well, tell me more. Tell me more why you think this is happening. And then the two of us together could get some therapy to figure out, is this actually going on? Instead, he said, no, that's all from your perspective. And he said, that's the way you are seeing it. You are only telling them your perspective. And so he was like, no, that's just what you're thinking. And I said, Jeff, there's a difference between perspective and perception, because he was just saying it was my perception. And I said, if you see someone eating, they are eating. That is fact. I haven't been allowed to unpack my 20 boxes in 5 months. That is fact. There is no perception on that. It's simply fact. Now, if I say, oh, I saw someone eating this delicious meal, that's perception. Because I don't truly know unless they literally said the meal was delicious. I don't know if it's delicious. It might look delicious to me. It might be my favorite food, but they might be going, man, I do not like this food at all, in their head, right? Internally. Okay. So when we're learning someone's attachment styles, we also have to learn, well, what is their processing style too? How do they best process? For him, like one of the things that he was learning about me, when I'm trying to discover something about myself, when I'm like, okay, there's something going on, like what is this? I tend to be an external speaker. That's how I process. Normally, in most everyday conversations, I tend to be very internal in both my thinking and speaking. So then sometimes I tend to, like there's a conversation going on, I'm having the processing happening internal in thinking, and sometimes it will take me a moment to speak because I'm still processing internally before I move into the external. Now, this isn't where it ends. However, this is where this particular video ends because we are gonna go way too long if we don't end it here. So if you're watching this video right now, check the link below, check the description below, see if the link is in there. If it's not in there, then you gotta wait because it hasn't come out yet. It'll be out next week, maybe earlier, maybe try and do it a little bit earlier, but at least by next week, it'll be out. And so if you're watching this later, the link will be there, and go on to the next video. All right, as always, please choose love in all that you do. Mahalo for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.